Coming from accounting and audit, I probably wasn't the happiest person around, staring at spreadsheets all day. So I knew I needed to do something. My family knew I needed to do something. Once I started flying again, 2022, that time frame, being a pilot was something that I needed to pursue. Before Blue Line, I was in the accounting and audit field. I did a lot of government audit work, government audit remediation work, as well as I did some accounting work for a diversified utility contractor that did solar farm installation. Prior to that, I was also in the military. I was in the Air Force from 2009 to 2015. That's what got us out here to North Carolina, where I was in the air transportation career field. Not to date myself too much, but early 90s, my dad was in the Air Force. We were stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. So I remember watching the first B-2 stealth bomber arrive to Whiteman Air Force Base. So that was just kind of my first moment in aviation where it was just kind of eye-opening that that's a possibility, right? I think I always wanted to be a pilot. I just didn't know how to become a pilot. So it took me quite a while to make that decision, right? So I'm 36, so a little older than most of our students here, not the traditional student that comes through Blue Line. But for us, it was a family decision. My wife and I, our two girls, we all had to be on the same page with this. This was a huge step, leaving a very comfortable living in accounting and audit to essentially go into, zero income and taking 6 months out of my life to come do some training to chase this crazy dream of being a pilot. So having everyone on board, having my two girls on board, my wife, we even had my parents and her parents involved with it. But we ultimately knew that that was kind of my dream, my passion, and really my calling for my life was to be a pilot. So it's a huge decision to make this jump, but kind of looking at it more of an investment in yourself and the potential future payoff for it. And then taking into account, coming from accounting and audit, I probably wasn't the happiest person around, staring at spreadsheets all day. Wasn't doing it for me, right? So I knew I needed to do something. My family knew I needed to do something. And I think once I started flying again, 2022, that time frame, and just the joy and kind of peace of mind that it gave me of just being back in the air flying again, I think that kind of solidified it for not just me, but my wife and my kids as well, that was kind of where I wanted to be, that aviation and being a pilot was something that I needed to pursue.
Did you look at other flight schools or no?
Yeah, like a couple. But yeah, I took the tour here and I was sold.
Well, that was me, right?
Yeah, it was you actually. Yeah, that is crazy. That's true.
I did some training at a Part 61 school prior to Blue Line. I love that aviation school. That's what got me started in this journey. But for me, I needed structure. Coming from the military into this, I like that structure. I like to know kind of what's next, right? So Blue Line lays that out for you. You have the syllabus, you have the structure, you have the timelines that you're going to be meeting at Blue Line. And I knew, talking to Blue Line, that they had that structure and they offered that structure with that syllabus that was going to get me to my goal of becoming a pilot efficiently, quickly, and safely. I worked with Daniel Hughes. He did my assessment flight. He was going through a career change, so he just kind of was able to provide that insight of how him and his family went about it, which was awesome to get that experience because, our family, we were in that same type of situation of like, how are we going to do this? What's going to be the best route? So just continued to talk about like that transition and what it was like for him. Really helped out and answered a lot of questions that we had. So for me, it was coming from execution mode, as I like to call it. So I was executing on a daily basis. I knew what my mission was. I knew what needed to be done on my day-to-day grind at my job, to switching to kind of that study mode, right? So I haven't done that in a while. So switching back into being a student and figuring out how I learn again, how I study best, what's going to work best for me, was probably the biggest struggle. It took me a few weeks to kind of buckle down and really figure out what was going to work best for me. But at the same time, Blue Line offered, a lot of help with all the instructors that they have, right? They all poured into you, whether it was your primary or any of the other instructors. They were all going to sit down with you and make sure that you knew what was next, what you needed to study. They passed the information on that you needed to know, but at the same time, just kind of reassured you that, you were moving in the right direction. All my instructors were great, from private through MEI. I didn't have a single one that, didn't know what they were doing or anything like that. So the knowledge that the instructors have here is excellent. Their piloting skills that they pass on to you in the airplane is excellent. And really just kind of latching onto a few of them and kind of using them as a mentor just to kind of guide me through the program and kind of, provide those tips and tricks of how to get through it successfully. And honestly, I think that starts even before you get here as a student. With the admissions team, I worked with Julie Daniels, who was kind of instrumental in setting me up for success prior to starting. She would always check in with me, make sure I was doing the right things, things like studying for written tests, getting King schools done, taking those written tests just to ensure that when I did get here, I could just solely focus on the training and, learning to fly the plane as best as I could. Once you get to Blue Line, you are immediately thrown into the syllabus, you're immediately thrown into the training program, you're provided your primary instructor. At the end of the day, all the instructors are pouring into you to ensure that you're going to pass your check rides and ultimately become just a safe pilot overall.
Johnson County traffic 369 to Bravo Lima, base runway 3, Johnson.
What airspeed are we looking for on
80,
base?
yeah, I'm pushing a little power here, and
Nice.
gotta keep that descent coming in.
Good.
I knew that was kind of my end goal as far as like my first job in aviation was to be an instructor at Blue Line. Just the culture and the family-like atmosphere that's been created here through instructors that are still here and ones that were, here in the past that have moved on to their next job in aviation. Just that culture that they've built, the family-like atmosphere is just, it's just such a cool thing to be a part of now. Seeing that coming through as a student really just kind of solidified that, the CFI at Blue Line is going to be that next step that you would want to take. I think at first I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? I was the old guy, right? Everyone else is, 18, 19, 20, and here's this guy, 36, so it took me a little bit to kind of get used to that. But once you kind of settle in and realize like, we all love airplanes, we all love aviation, we're all shooting for the same goal, that kind of disconnection of age and that age gap kind of went away. And you really just connected with them on more of a, aviation and professional level, all shooting towards, getting through the program successfully, passing our check rides on the first try.
So there's only two things there, right? Beautiful landing. One is just going to be, just keep us coming down to that second stripe.
Gotcha.
Just hold off a little bit on the round out, right? Once you get to that round out, where do our eyes need to go?
End of the runway.
Yep, that's going to help with that that longitudinal axis, keeping it lined up with center line, right?
Cool.
That's where that right rudder is going to come in. You're going to need some right rudder.
Gotcha.
Always going to need the right rudder on that landing. So
Copy that.
just watch that on these next couple.
Okay.
Yeah, so now being a CFI, it's awesome to kind of be able to share the knowledge that was given to me by previous and current instructors. So just being able to pass that on to my current students and any of the other students at Blue Line right now, just an awesome experience. 369, you good?
Oh yeah.
All right, have fun, be safe.
That's the plan.
It's gotten rid of that imposter syndrome that I had before, so now I understand what we're doing and teaching it and just solidifying kind of, that this is the right path and I made the right decision. So, but being an instructor it's super rewarding. Passing that knowledge on in the ground lessons that we have with our students, seeing kind of their light bulbs go off on certain topics, things like that, is just super rewarding. And then taking that out into the plane and taking someone, especially in the private academy, from maybe they've done a flight assessment with us, maybe they haven't, so they don't have very, very little experience, if any. So taking them from that to, them becoming a private pilot, certificated pilot, is super rewarding. And those kind of aha moments in the plane where, they were struggling with landings and then all of a sudden it just clicks, right? So it's just solidifying my choice of changing careers. Good work, man. That was solid, dude.
Yes, sir.
1, 2, 3. All right. Ultimately, my career goals is to fly either Part 91 or Part 135, leaning more towards the corporate side of aviation. Dream job right now is to fly for NetJets, is the company I'd love to fly for. So for someone considering a career change and becoming a pilot, if it is truly your passion and your calling and your dream, continue to chase that passion, continue to chase that dream. There's so many different ways that you can go about doing it and accomplishing those dreams, but ultimately it's going to come down to you and your support network finding out the best way for you to chase those dreams and accomplish those goals that you have in becoming a pilot. But if you're considering a career change into aviation, I highly recommend it. It is an extremely rewarding career. So far, the short career that I've had of it has been rewarding, and I know moving forward it's just going to continue to reward me and just continue to bless our family.